I think because we have worked with so many different religions, it's more of a God language than a Jesus language.
Two situations in recent years. We were interim MCC representatives for a couple of months in Laos, and then later for several months in Bangladesh. And in both of those offices, the national staff are majority non-Christian. So in Laos it was largely Buddhist, and in Bangladesh 85% we had a large national staff there, and 85% would have been Muslim, with 1 or 2 Buddhists and Hindus thrown in, and then a few national staff that were Christians. But in both places, we had, I think in Laos we had weekly prayers, and in Bangladesh we had daily prayers with everybody, where we would share concerns, just like we would here in a prayer meeting. What's going on in your life? What are the needs? What are your family issues? And there was no problem. And for me, it raised the question of going back to the Jesus language. Do we see Jesus or God at work in people who don't profess to be Christian? Do we see that happening even in those situations? What was interesting to me, especially in Bangladesh, was that the people that worked with us there, worked with MCC, although they were Muslim, they were quite happy to help with the MCC, to represent MCC actually, which was a Christian-based organization, and they were quite happy to be a part of that and to represent that.
And to explain what
MCC was. Now, they didn't use Christ language.
No.
But they were certainly, in all other respects, they were certainly supporters and promoters of what was being done.
One thing I thought of right away was the day that we had the 4 horrible H's in Ivy.
We're going to have train sounds here.
Yeah. Headwind, hills, humidity, and heat. We had all 4 in one day at the same time. And this was a long bike trip. So we were going up this hill, which seemed really steep. We got to the top and were getting off to rest. There was a couple sitting at a picnic table, and they said, "Would you like some water?"
Actually, I think it was lemonade.
Lemonade. I don't know what it was, but it was the most wonderful thing that could have happened. I just often think of that moment.
Well, we've done several long bike rides over the years, and one of the things, this has happened more than once.
Yes.
Where we meet total strangers along the way who want to be hospitable. So we'll be in a campsite and somebody comes out with, "Would you like some hot cherry cobbler and ice cream?" Like, we couldn't have carried that on our bikes.
You couldn't cook it at a campfire.
Our second long bike ride was in 2002, and I remember in that summer, it was not quite a year after 2001 had happened, and that was kind of a downer for most of us, but the bike ride just sort of restored my faith in humanity, because we met so many good people on that trip. The other big one that I would mention would be in 2007. We were on a long bike ride around Lake Ontario, and that was when we had that ride ended abruptly when Sally Jo was hit by a car, and we had so many people, total strangers, help us through that it was just really interesting and amazing. I remember waiting, as soon as it had happened, waiting for the ambulances and so on to arrive, and it seemed like all of a sudden there were lots of people around helping. There was an EMT who had showed up. There were other people making phone calls and asking if they could help us, and it just felt like like there was a whole, I've said this before, but it felt like there's a whole host of angels around. That was the feeling that I had. What was really interesting to me later when I saw a picture of the scene with the people who were around helping was that there were multiple ethnicities in that group. And obvious from their features that these were people from a whole variety of backgrounds. First trip was to a little local hospital while we were waiting for her to be transferred to a trauma center in Syracuse. And while I was out in the waiting room, I'm sure looking upset, a couple came up and wanted to know what was going on, and I told them, and they said, well, what are you going to do with your bikes, which were sitting in the lobby of the hospital at that point. And I told them we were waiting to go to Syracuse, and they said, well, they think they know where they could get a bike rack, and they could go out and get a rack and drive our bikes down to Syracuse for us. This was a 3-hour drive. And they did. They went out and they got a bike rack, and by the time we were ready to go with the ambulance to Syracuse, we had the bikes loaded on their car and all the stuff that we were carrying. And they drove all the way to Syracuse for us. Settling up with them, they wouldn't take any money even for gas. And a week later, they came back to the hospital to see how she was doing.
Wow. Isn't it amazing? Not always on our bikes, but I was just thinking of this a couple days ago.
Oh, yeah.
I had another accident. It was a very small accident, and I was bleeding from my arm, and we were looking in our bags trying to find, all we had was water to wash it off. We were near the train tracks up by the Lincoln. The train engineer leans out the window and says, "Hey!" and throws us a packet of antiseptic pads, wipes.
Yeah. Yeah, he evidently saw this happen to the things there near Logan.
People are so wonderful.
I think it's a reminder to us to do the same. Yeah. It really is very meaningful to people who are on the receiving end.